Hi class, we're going to add to our Hello World project. So I want to make it a little bit more interesting here. I'm going to add a cube or a ball. I think I'll add a sphere. So I'm going to choose game object. "3D object," and I think I'm going to do a sphere. Now notice in our scene view, we see our sphere sitting at position 0, 0, 0, our point of origin. And when we're talking about our XYZ axis in 3D space, our point of origin is kind of our relative location that we can refer back to so that we can find things. Now, when we look at our sphere in the inspector, we see that besides the position, we have its rotation and scale in the transform section. This sphere has a mesh filter associated with it so that it has a 3D shape, and it's just kind of a hollow surface that just gives us our 3D atmosphere, kind of like an egg, only without anything inside of it. And then we have decided that this sphere is also a collider by default, so we can work with that, and we will eventually here as we work with our tools. And then our mesh renderer gives us the capability to have this object to be seen and what kind of materials and things are going to be applied to this object. We see that we have a default material here, and we'll again work with that here in a minute. So we have a lot of objects in our inspector for us. We're going to add another component to our game object. And I would like to add a rigid body. And what the rigid body does is kind of allows the object to be affected by physics. So when we add that rigid body to our game object, we see that now it has mass and drag and gravity related aspects to it. When we're working with all of the physical simulations in Unity, we have a base on the metric system. 1 unit of distance equals 1 meter. 1 unit of mass equals 1 kilogram. And there's a default gravitational pull in the downward direction. An average human character would be about 2 units or 2 meters tall. Let's play this and watch what happens. If you notice, I've changed my layout here to what the textbook has pretty much. But I'm going to stop that. If you noticed, it just dropped like a rock because it was affected by gravity. I'm going to click my Maximize on Play button so you can experience the full awesomeness of that. And I'm going to play it again. And there it goes. Okay. So our object is dropping. That's really cool because we didn't really have to do anything. Now we're going to take that sphere that we've created and make it into prefab. And a prefab is sort of a template in Unity. It's a reusable element. And so we can instantiate that or clone it into existence per se as much as we want. So kind of like a template, a mold, however you want to think about it. I find my sphere. I'm going to drag my sphere into my project folder. Did I do it? And now it's a prefab because I've got it here in my project folder. I'm going to go ahead and rename that. So this is going to be my sphere prefab. Now if you click once, it'll select it, kind of pause there for a second and click again, and you'll go into rename mode, or you can right click and choose rename. So that's my sphere prefab. I'm going to get rid of this one that's in my hierarchy pane now because I don't want a random one just showing up. So we've created a prefab now, and it's going to be an object that we could choose. So let's go ahead and create a C# script to generate instances of our sphere. So again, I'm going to, in my project window, choose Create C# script. It created one for us, and we're going to call this one Sphere Spawner. When I press enter, it'll rename that C# project, and I'm going to double click on it to open it in Visual Studio. I want to reload this whole thing. Now, our sphere spawner code, as you can see, is generated with the same default methods as our hello world. So whenever we create a C# script in Unity, it's going to have these same default characteristics. Now, in this script, we're going to create a class level variable, a class field. So we're going to make it public, and it's going to be a game object type, and we're going to call it sphere prefab bar. So this is going to be our variable where we're going to associate our prefab, that prefab sphere that we created. That's fun to say. Now I want to instantiate an instance of that prefab. So sphere prefab bar. I'm going to save all and go to my Unity screen. Now, whenever we are working with this script, we need also again to associate it with something that is relative to our scene in our hierarchy screen. So we're going to click on our main camera, and we can actually associate this sphere spawner with our main camera, and then we'll have two scripts associated. Now, if we don't run our hello world script all the time, we just uncheck it. We can leave it associated. Of course, we can delete it, but we'll just go ahead and unassociate it right now. Now, when we look at that association of our sphere spawner script, we see we have our sphere prefab bar, our variable, showing up here in the inspector, and it says it has none. It needs a game object. It's like, I don't know, I don't have one. So there's lots of ways we can supply that game object to it. One way is to grab this prefab and drag it over there and drop it, and now it knows that that is the game object that we want associated with that variable. Okay, so let's try running our game. We should see our sphere drop again. There it goes. All right. So it's working again. Remember, we deleted the instance of our sphere from our hierarchy screen, so we don't really have it necessarily as a part of our scene, and our script file is instantiating that sphere for us. Now I'm going to go back to Visual Studio and update our script, and just like our hello world, we're going to comment out the code from our start script, and we're going to run that instead in our update. Let's see if we can get some spheres drop in. We'll save that. And run it. Look at them. Now, these spheres are colliding with each other, so that's why we see a lot of random activity. They're being affected by gravity. They're moving around to the awesomeness of Unity, so they look really great. Let's give those spheres kind of a floor or something to pile up on. What do you think? We'll go over again to create a 3D object, and this time we'll create a cube, and we're going to name this cube floor. Now on our cube, we're going to update some of the transform characteristics so that it can be more of a floor for us. Sorry. I'm going to go to our position variable, and we're going to name it or set it to be 0, -4, 0, and you'll see how this impacts it. Our rotation, we're going to leave it all 0. And then the scale, we're going to stretch it a little bit. 10, 1, and 10. And now we see it looks a little bit more like a floor a little bit. So what we did is set the Y position to -4, so it will be a little bit behind our sphere, and then we're trying to make it into a little bit more of a floor. Now we could use the gizmos and different resizer tools to make those changes too. So anything else that we want to do, let's try it with our floor. And that looks cool, so some of them are piling up a little bit. They're rolling because they're spheres, so isn't that cool? Now you can try some different things with Unity. Try setting up some other objects that aren't necessarily colliders. Let's set a capsule in there and make him a little smaller. He looks pretty huge. Move him around so that he's already kind of on the floor. Now let's try running that. And they're bouncing off of him a little bit. That looks pretty cool. So you can add some different shapes and see how things work. We could try, now in our capsule we have our default shader showing up again. You should be able to set his color pretty easy for that. But it's not showing me the standards that I am used to. Now, of course, we could take a picture